Coming up, we're finding out what's new in JAWS 2026.
This is Double Tap, where blind people talk tech.
Hello.
Here's Stephen Scott and Shaun Preece.
Hello.
We will be the blind people then. Hi, Shaun Preece. How you doing?
That's that another year done already. 2026. Everything's 26.
And do you know, it's funny you say that. I was thinking just the other day, November. I mean, how did that happen?
I don't know. How does time happen? Feedback at doubletaponair.com. Let us know.
Yeah, honestly, it is ridiculous. The year is flying by. I feel old. But aside that, thanks. Yeah,
Sorry.
Thank you. I love how people tell me that. Do you know, it's amazing the amount of people who say, oh, yeah, you've got a real face for radio, haven't you? Yeah, I know.
Great radio
people keep
voice,
telling
though.
me. Yeah.
It's fine.
Don't get as much of that anymore, sadly. Anyway, plenty of... Maybe let's see if our guest can cheer me up somewhat, because you're not doing any good at this.
Sorry.
Let's welcome to the show. Let's just dive right in. We've got Ryan Jones joining us from Vispero. Ryan, a face and voice for radio. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks, guys. I'm still stuck on the question about how does time happen. I'm trying to figure that one out over here.
Can you answer that on behalf of
No,
Vispero?
my brain's way too small to answer that one.
That's not. There's no view on time when it comes to Vispero, right? There's no views. There's no management line on that one. Okay,
That's right. Yeah, sorry.
So how's things? How's it all going over there?
Good. Busy time of the season for us, obviously, with the first 2026 versions of JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion. And you were mentioning that a second ago, and it makes me think of the car companies. You know, when you get a car, you start like in May or June seeing the next year's car, and you're not even halfway through the current year. But this time of year is when we always, end of October, put out the numerical release for the next year. So it's always a really busy time in the fall.
And of course, you're working ahead of time anyway. So what's new in 2027?
Good question, right?
Yeah, we'll just jump right ahead. Just move right on.
That's right.
2026. That's so old now, right?
That's old now. That's right. That's the ancient history.
Well, you know, before we dive into what's new, I have to ask you a little bit about this ongoing, and I have to say, controversy around pricing. Maybe it's less controversy and more confusion. I think we have talked about it now. This will be the fifth conversation we've had where we've brought it up. It's fair to say, I think, Ryan, that it feels from the outside that there's been a little bit of confusion around this pricing structure, where we're heading, where it's all going, what's available, what's, SMAs versus perpetual licenses versus subscriptions. Do you look back at this time and think maybe we should just have said, you know what, scrap all the rest of this and just go straight for subscriptions? Let's simplify this.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because that was certainly one of the options on the table. But when we started listening to customers and having those conversations, especially with our dealers, with our health insurance in certain countries, the feedback was that would not really be possible for us, not in a one swoop kind of motion. And so really a lot of the confusion, I think, is coming around the different nuances that are having to be dealt with because of the markets. I mean, when you think about how JAWS or Fusion Suite products are distributed around the world, there's some places they're tied to health insurance, some places they're tied to rehabilitation funding. Sometimes it's bought by the end user, it's bought by the employer. There's so many different channels or ways that people buy it, and that's adding a lot of complexity, and it always has. So that's nothing new. But when you start to try to change some of those things, it adds a lot of layers, and I think that's added to confusion for some, and because we're having to make different decisions in different countries, for example. So all of that together, when you kind of look at the global piece of it, it's a lot to do, but the key thing is that we've been listening to customers and we're making decisions based on what their needs are. And I think you guys had Stuart on recently from Sight and Sound, and there's been a lot of partnership with them in the UK around the upgrades and the timing of those things. And so it's a lot of moving pieces.
Is it almost you're dealing with the Microsoft problem here with like legacy? Excuse me. Are you seeing this as a transitional period? I mean, later on down the line, is it going to be basically, there's one choice here?
There will, yeah, I would definitely think of it as a transition. Now, I don't know that I would say there's going to be one choice, because the key point is we need to hear what customers can deal with. But there's certainly a transition happening, and other companies have been through this transition. Microsoft's gone through it. Adobe, we're nowhere near those sizes, obviously, but pretty much everyone in the software space has gone through licensing model transitions. I mean, you can't go buy anything hardly without it being a subscription these days. And so we're certainly moving in that direction, but there's a lot of things to work through as we go in that direction.
True.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that, because we were just talking the other day about Eloquence becoming subscription model through Code Factory. That's a thing that's going to be happening. If you want to get Eloquence on Android, you'll have to pay a subscription fee for that, which is, I mean, everything's going subscription now. We were chatting the other day as well about features in your car, which apparently are subscription model. I don't think subscription's the issue here when it comes to JAWS. We all know that if you want to have a screen reader as powerful as this, on your system, and it's a paid-for product, you're going to have to pay for it one way or the other. I think the issue is that you have got a lot of legacy here, which is of no fault of your own. This is something that's built up over a lot of time, as you say, across a lot of different countries. And we did talk about this on the show, because we had Matthew Horsepool on with us just the other day, chatting about some of the nuances of all of this, saying what he thought perhaps you couldn't say around subscriptions and so on, and SMAs and all of that. But ultimately, what he was saying is, look, there's a legacy here. This is something which is continuing, but eventually will likely become subscription. I don't think people are against that. I think it's just the initial confusion around all this, and then we throw home annual license into the mix. And my personal frustration with this is that I live in the UK. I'd quite like to get access to home annual license, but that's not an option for me. So, the only way I can do it is to either have a really nice friend in the States or Canada who can help me out, which doesn't feel like the right way to do it. But, that's an option, I suppose. It just feels a little bit, like you're missing a trick here, getting more people on. But there does seem to be a challenge with that. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before, so nothing's necessarily changed dramatically. I mean, one thing that I will say is we have some new sales leadership in the company now, and one of them is particularly focused on working with our international sales and how we partner and work with our dealers to make sure that we're providing a business model that works for them. And so he's really been focused in the last few months on listening to the different countries, the different dealers, the different markets, and working on ways to try to make options available that are both advantageous for our dealers and the customers. And so I don't have any news to share on it necessarily, but to say that it is a topic that's coming up. It's feedback that we hear a lot. Feedback is good. We need feedback. And all of these things are being addressed by our new sales leadership, and in very intentional conversations. There's been a lot of really good conversations, and I think that's only going to continue, and we'll see where it leads over the next few months, and certainly down the road in years.
$15 a month, I'm in. I don't mind subscriptions.
That, is it? It's
Does
not
that
far
sound
off
all
that
right?
in the States, I don't think.
Yeah, in the States, it's for JAWS. It's pretty close to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's doable. But the key thing is here that you feel, and you are part of the management structure there. But I don't know that you don't deal directly in this area with your work, but you do feel that they're receptive. You do feel that in the company that people are being heard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Feedback is king. People are being heard. I mean, we have discussions on this at every level of the company. So no one is immune to these conversations, and everyone is listening. I
mean, it's all for the good, right? It's not that, I mean, I've said this many times. I've had people email me in saying, you're doing down JAWS by saying these things, or you're talking down. And I'm really not. I'm doing quite the opposite. I want it to survive. I want it to do well. I also want more people to be able to access it. I think about those people who use it at work and want to come home and continue using it. I will admit, though, there are some people who've got in touch and said, I'd rather do anything else but use JAWS when I get home. I want to get away from it because it's like the office thing, So there's that view as well. But I
choice, that's the
choice
key.
is
key. People want choice to it. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, look, let's dive into what's actually new, because I want to talk about some of the features that are in this. This sounds like fun, cool stuff in JAWS 2026. And I guess the first thing I want to bring up is the new login or new account areas. So talk us through this. You have to set up an account with Vispero.
Yeah. So what we've done here, this is something we've been wanting to do for a while, and I've finally been able to get it done, is have people register and create an account with the product. And there's two kind of primary reasons I would say that we're doing this. One is we need to actually be able to reach customers to notify them of things that are going on. I mean, if you think about using JAWS, like it's integral. If you need JAWS, you need it all the time when working on the computer, and you need it to work 100% of the time. You need it always available. And one thing that's happening now in the world of technology, and we've talked about this before, why it's important to keep the products updated. Things are changing a lot. Chrome is changing every week. Office is changing. Adobe products are changing. All these things are pushing out updates. And there's been situations that have come up multiple times the last couple of years where an update breaks something. An update to Chrome broke some ability for JAWS to copy and paste text a few months ago. And that's a key piece of using a web browser, is being able to copy information from the browser and go put it in a document or something. And so we've never had a great way to reach out individually to customers to say, email them, for example, and say, there's a critical Chrome update that came out that broke something. We just released an emergency update to JAWS. You should download it now. We've had ways through social media, we've had the message center, but those only reach a fraction of the users. And so by having everyone create an account and register, now we can email our user base. So if Chrome or Office or whatever update comes out next week and we need to tell people to run an update or not run an update, or here's a fix for JAWS for something, we can now reach out to people. So that's one reason. The other big reason is it's setting us up for future functionality. So we know that with cloud computing, with virtual machines, all these things that people use now, you're not always tied to one machine anymore. So a lot of us spend a lot of time setting up our JAWS to be configurations to be a certain way, speech settings and verbosity and all these things. And you want to have those settings move with you if you have to go to a different machine or if you're working on a virtual machine. And so we've had ways to move settings in the past, but it's been a manual process. So we're looking and exploring things like saving your settings in the cloud, for example. So if I go use a different machine and I sign in to JAWS, then it could pull down my settings for Ryan Jones and not Steven or Sean or whoever. So those things require us to have accounts, though. We have to have a way to tie information to the user of the product. And same goes for AI. If we think about AI things down the road, we would want to personalize AI. So, imagine Picture Smart, for example, learning how you like pictures described and styling its answers based on you, Stephen, and not the way Sean might want a picture described. So those things might come about, but in order for any of that to even be an option for us, we have to have accounts in the product. So that's why we're launching this now, and it is for the U.S. only at first. So if you guys aren't going to see this outside of the U.S., anyone outside of the U.S. or using the product in a different language should not see this. Should not see this account creation process happening for you yet. But we will be rolling it out to other countries as we're working through all the different regional and local privacy, data security, all the different regulations that countries have. As we work through those, we'll start to expand this to other countries.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions on that. So there's a difference between logging in and registering, almost like registering a product. Are you going to need to log in before you can use JAWS?
So when you create an account with us, that's basically registering and creating your account. And the first time you do this, you will be logged into the product, but you won't have to re-log in unless you manually log out. So like on my computer, when I created my account, I entered my information, it logged me into my JAWS, and I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to ever re-log in unless I go manually log out or I go to a different computer, for example, sometime down the road. But it's not something like when you go to your bank or your online pizza restaurant or whatever. You don't have to log in every time. You log in the one time and it's going to save it on that computer for you.
Okay, but if you're installing JAWS for the first time on a computer that doesn't have an internet connection, can you still do that, or are you going to have to get an internet connection to do it?
If you do not have an internet connection, it will not prompt you to register, since it can't reach back out and provide the information. So it's only going to work if you are on a computer that's online. So if you have no internet connection, no registration, and obviously all the features that would be around accounts wouldn't work anyway because they would require the internet.
But JAWS itself would work at core functionality.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's good to know.
And all those settings would work as well, right? Because it's already...
Yeah, exactly. All the normal things would work. You're just not going to get certain... Just like you don't have access to things now if you don't have an internet. You don't have Picture Smart. You don't have other things. So it's no different than it is now.
Yeah.
And what's the privacy T's and C's here on in terms of conditions? I mean, should people be worried about any data brokerage with your details at all?
We have a privacy policy that anyone can read, so we encourage anyone to go read it. I think it's freedomscientific.com/privacy, but the general highlights is this is our internal use. We're not selling this data. We're collecting things that we use for product decisions, for contacting customers. But please go read the privacy policy if anyone has questions or wants to get into the details of it.
Yeah, I think everyone's instantly suspicious when you have to log in or you have to give details of any kind, because there's that sense, that fear that data is going to be sold potentially, not misused necessarily, but sold. I think is always the concern. Yeah, but that's absolutely not happening here.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Let's talk about another feature, which is interesting, and that is Page Explorer. This is one of the big new features. In fact, we got a little video here. This is from your own website, your own YouTube channel, actually. Just a little bit of a description of how Page Explorer works.
As soon as a page finishes loading, just press Insert, Shift, E, and JAWS will give you a clear summary of the layout, the main content, key links, and the most efficient ways to move through the page.
There is a cookie consent alert at the bottom right that can be dismissed.
Page Explorer helps you get oriented faster, especially on complex or unfamiliar websites. It can also point out important links, so you don't have to search through the entire page to find them.
Are the travel alerts visible on this page? Yes, the travel alerts are visible on this page. There is a travel alerts link located just below the main booking section.
You can also ask follow-up questions right inside Page Explorer to get more details about the page you're on.
Type your question here, edit, tell me all the travel alerts. There is one current travel alert listed, Hurricane Melissa. Bullet, information is current as of October 26, 2025.
So that is a little example of how a Page Explorer works. This is essentially a summarization feature, right? It's not going to take actions for you.
Yeah, at this point, it's a way to help you get familiar with very complex or very involved type of web pages. So it's going to give you that breakdown of how the page is structured, what it thinks some of the key pieces of information are, and then what it thinks some of those key links are. So it's not going to take any action at this point. It's just there to help you get familiarized with how the site is set up, or that page is set up, I should say.
First question. Why eloquence as the voice?
Why
Secondly,
not? That's the question.
Oh, please,
why not?
come on.
That's the choice. That's the JAWS choice of voices now.
That choice of voices. That's becoming a catchphrase almost on here. Good night. So is that basically taking a picture and then we're just getting an image description, or is there something more in depth to that?
Under the hood, it's more in depth than that. Actually, it's analyzing the same information that JAWS gets. So when you go on a web page, JAWS gets the information from the page, the code of the page essentially, and interrogates it and builds the model that JAWS uses to work with it. So we're using some of that same technology to feed to the AI system so that it doesn't just have a picture of the page, it actually has the code of the page, which is much more accurate in what it can interpret and then tell you about the page.
Oh, of course, again, I'm thinking of privacy. If it's taking a screenshot of the websites that you're visiting and sending them off somewhere, I just wanted to make sure it's not actually a graphical image that's being processed in the cloud on an AI server.
Yeah, and that's why it's an optional feature. So for those who have any sort of hesitancy around AI, some people are not confident with AI. Some people are always concerned about privacy. It's an optional feature. And it again, it's the way I think of it as AI. We're using it to help bring in additional information, it's not a core function of the product. And so all the core capabilities of JAWS, for example, for screen reading are still there and don't rely on AI. So you completely have the choice as the user if you want to use AI. And if you don't, you'll still have all the normal functionality that's always been there. But AI is helping us build bridges and get more information that we didn't used to have access to.
So am I right in saying that Picture Smart and Page Explorer are both reaching out to OpenAI or whatever it is you're using here for AI?
Yes.
They're using that functionality, right? So if I scanned an image and used Picture Smart AI, be it, say, a bank statement, let's say, that would be going to OpenAI.
Correct. It is, yes.
And that's something I guess people need to know, right? Because you're telling them that, I guess, through the documentation.
Yeah, we have a special AI privacy page where we talk about what systems are being used. We talk about how the data is handled. So, for example, on that page, we're telling customers that we have business relationships with these AI companies, with OpenAI and with Anthropic, and those business relationships, because we pay for their services, the guarantee is that none of that data is used for training. It's not tied to anything that can identify you as a person. So like Stephen, if you do your bank statement, it doesn't send up Stephen Scott's info to OpenAI and say, hey, this is Stephen Scott and here's his info and this is the picture he wants to analyze. So we do build in privacy safeguards. Everything's encrypted, but people can go look at our AI privacy page and it's got a lot of information on how all of it works and give us feedback too about concerns that people have.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Are there any features within JAWS, and I'm trying to rack my brains here because I'm sure I've used these features before. Are there any OCR type features, not obviously AI based or summarization features, but on board or on device OCR, so that if I wanted to say it still scan a bank statement, but it not go to the cloud, what could I do there?
All of our OCR capabilities are actually on device. So none of them use any external AI. So when you use convenient OCR to review your screen or to review a PDF. One of the things that people use convenient OCR for the most is PDFs that are scanned, but not regular text. And so all of that is done on device. It doesn't send that information anywhere.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like Kurzweil 1000 back in the day and things like that. That everything was on device, right? Because it was all software running on.
So you can scan your bank statement, Stephen.
I'll be fine. You can still do that.
I can figure out I've got no money at all.
I was going to say all the zeros. It doesn't need AI to interpret zeros.
There's only one zero on there, Ryan. Only one. Now, for enterprise, for customers who, I imagine in business, for example, and this is a huge debate right now. I mean, the business world is grappling with dealing with a world that wants to use features like ChatGPT and all the rest of it. And of course, built into screen readers as well, I'd imagine, because, a lot of people want to use it. In fact, I remember reading a story just the other day about, one company that really did its best to keep, everything off their systems, turn all these features off. And people were just pulling out their own smartphones and doing it anyway,
taking pictures of the screen and doing it. Yes.
So, I mean, it's going to happen one way or the other, but I imagine businesses would want the ability to switch it off. And that's one thing I know a lot of people talk about when it comes to JAWS in the workplace, that you have got that capability. You can switch a lot of these features off for enterprise.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something we talked to customers early on when we were developing some of this. And that was the feedback is, this is great, but in certain circumstances, we want this turned off. We are, interestingly enough, everyone at the beginning was saying, oh, our company's going to turn this off. But now we're seeing a lot more companies coming to us and saying, we know this stuff is really valuable for our users. It helps them do their jobs better. We want to use it. So can you talk us through the security and how all this works? And so we're partnering with a lot of companies now to help them see how we're using AI and where their data is going so that they can turn it on. And I think the other thing that's coming, I would say, I don't know when, but we're even exploring how can we, if a company uses their own version of ChatGPT or some other AI model, we could leverage their own internal models to do some of this processing. We're also looking at onboard AI, so AI that processes things on your local computer and doesn't send it to the cloud. That's certainly a way to help from a privacy perspective, but those technologies still are not quite there in a lot of cases. And you have to have a very high-end computer still to do a lot of those. So all of this is coming. But our choice was we don't want to wait till we can do onboard AI. We want to get things out there now and let people have the choice if you want to use it the way it's designed with the cloud, or if you want to wait. It's your choice now.
That's the challenge, I think, when it comes to rolling this out, because a lot of people say, well, can I just do it on device? You know, they look at perhaps what people are doing with iPhones and with Macs. And of course, the Macs and the iPhones have got the capability to do that. And some Windows PCs do, but not all yet. And if you're in the enterprise world, it's almost unlikely you're going to have one of those for a couple of years. That's if you even get one at all, right? Because you might be just getting the latest from Lenovo with the latest AMD in it, but maybe it doesn't have the chipset in it or whatever it might need, the MPU in there to actually do it all on board.
Yeah. And that's why I think you're always going to see some options. Even when we start using more on-device AI, there will be options of using it on device or using it in the cloud, and whichever one's more powerful or more palatable, that's the one you'll be able to use.
Again, I think we're looking at transitional period. I think big enterprises will have their own AI servers at some point.
A lot of them are. Yeah, they're really moving that way because they see the power of this, and they don't want to exclude everyone, but they all these policies, IT policies, security infrastructure, these are long-standing systems and architectures that are put into place at companies. And so getting change done for those sensitive companies like banks, financials, other things, it's a long process.
That's why you're still getting Windows XP running trains and things like that. It's like that's still a thing. Right. This particular feature doesn't come without its own controversy as well. I've been reading that home annual users in the US, and I imagine Canada as well, are not able to access this feature, so they can't use Page Explorer. What's going on there?
Yeah, so Page Explorer was designed to be something to really work in complex environments. So think about the systems that you might use at a company to do your HR work, like your timesheets, your requesting time off, your IT ticketing systems, these places where we have complex pages, complex environments. That's really where Page Explorer was designed for at this point. And so it's tied to the home and professional editions right now, because that's more the environments where the user segments where that becomes more applicable. So right now it's tied to the Pro and the Home editions. All of the other capabilities with AI that you've already had, so things like Picture Smart, and then in 2026, the new AI labeler, those are still available in Home Annual. And so we've been getting a lot of good feedback around the AI labeler, which we can talk about as well. But the Page Explorer is available in the Home and Pro editions at this point.
I'll be honest with you, I don't quite understand that. I could understand if you said it's only available in the Pro version and not at all on the Home. But the fact that you're throwing the other version of Home in there, doesn't that sort of mute your point there?
Well, that Home edition, and I think you're going to hear in the not too distant future some possible changes of some of these names, because they are somewhat confusing. The Home edition is actually used in a lot of other environments. I'm not talking about Home Annual in the US. I'm talking about the true JAWS Home, which that name has been around for many years, and it's international. So it's both available in the US and then in all of the different markets. That edition is also used in a lot of education environments, and this feature is really beneficial for education. If you're a student using a learning management tool like Blackboard or some other LMS system, or these complex sites that deliver online education, the Page Explorer is very beneficial there. So we left it in that edition as well, because it's used by more than just people at home.
Okay.
I mean, it is very confusing. I mean,
it is confusing.
It doesn't actually make any. It's a name that's outdated in its own way.
It's the name that's outdated, and like I said, just keep your ears peeled, because I think you're going to hear some things in the not too distant future. That confusion is something that's actively being addressed, and there'll be more to come pretty quickly on that.
But I will say, listening to your answer there, I'm thinking, but the way it's sold to me on that video is that it's about almost making the web easier to use. I would have thought Home Annual users would benefit from this even more than anyone else. So I don't know. It doesn't feel like a pro feature to me. I mean, I imagine it is. I imagine it will be brilliant for all that. But I just wonder if, actually in a lot of ways, this would be a feature that would be welcomed by a lot of Home Annual users, many of whom, of course, are paying a little bit more this year because the price has gone up, and maybe thinking, well, hang on a minute, I'm paying more money and I'm not getting even the latest feature.
Yeah, and that's feedback that we've definitely heard. So that's something we are listening to, and the team is looking, options that have been discussed, or is there a way to do an add-on for this sort of a feature? Like a buy up, or you pay an extra amount to get access to it, or something like that. Those are things that are being explored because we are hearing that same feedback from across the community. So we'll see how that will all translate, but that's definitely something that's being taken into consideration.
Okay.
This is well, hang on a second. This is down to cost, though, isn't it? This must be down to the cost of operating this, because a lot of
AI
people
tokens.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't fully understand how this works, and I get that. A lot of people do, though. They understand that when you make an AI request, when you're using AI, it's costing money. It costs the company money to do. So by limiting it to some degree, does that help cover the costs from the pro licenses and the home license, not the home annual?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a difference in cost in those licenses. And so when you factor in the cost of building the software, maintaining the software, there is an aspect of that. The heavier usage of AI, and again, this was built with complexity in mind. So it's doing a lot of AI processing, and it's still in the cloud because, as we talked about a minute ago, these things aren't available on device. So because it's doing it in the cloud, it certainly costs money, and there's a big infrastructure needed to make all of this work. So by aligning it with the primary use cases, and of course there are plenty of use cases you could come up with of why it could be valuable at home, and that's what we're listening to customers to learn about. But by aligning it with those pro and home licenses, we're kind of aligning our cost structure along with the pricing models for the different editions that have been around.
DoubleTap thanks Pneuma Solutions for supporting this podcast and for championing the belief that access to information is a right, not a privilege. From the classroom to the workplace, Pneuma is transforming how organizations deliver accessible content, empowering blind and print-disabled people to engage fully, independently, and securely. Whether it's providing remote tech support through Remote Incident Manager, turning inaccessible files into readable ones with Scribe, or making virtual meetings inclusive with Scribe for Meetings, Pneuma's cloud-based tools are paving the way for a more inclusive digital world. Their work isn't just innovative, it's essential. And to celebrate our partnership, they're giving away 10 Remote Incident Manager and 10 Scribe for Document subscriptions exclusively to the DoubleTap community. You can sign up at doubletaponair.com/subscribe for your chance to win and stay up to date with everything we're working on.
So let's talk about the AI labeling that you mentioned earlier. This does sound very cool.
Yeah, this is something that started out in the early adopter program back in the May update of 2025. That's when we first put it out there. So we got feedback on it. People could turn it on. They could opt in to the AI labeler and try it out, give us feedback. And we made a number of adjustments based on feedback that was received. And now it's turned on by default in 2026. So when you come across, if you're on the web or some application where you've got controls or buttons that aren't labeled properly. So we've all heard, like when we're using the web, unlabeled 0 button, or the edit box where it just says edit and it doesn't say first name edit because JAWS didn't know what the label was. It wasn't tagged properly on the page. And so those scenarios that sort of prevent us from filling out a form properly or knowing exactly what we're about to submit. Those things are where the AI labeler is great, because when you get to one of those fields, like an edit box or a button that's not labeled, if you press Insert G, as in graphic, this is the keystroke that the old graphics labeler has always used, it will send a quick picture of that control and that screen up to AI and say, hey, what do you think this really should be labeled? And it will, within usually about 1 second, come back and it'll say something like submit button or search button or first name edit. So it'll do it very, very quickly, and then it will save that label on your computer. So if you label something today and you come back to that page 2 months from now, assuming the page hasn't changed a lot, then it will still say first name edit when it gets to that same spot. So it will save that label on your computer and then allow you to know what it is going forward. So that's been really helpful. We've gotten a lot of good feedback on people using this, because we've all felt that pain of, I can't tell what this control is. I can't tell this is the last name or the social security number box, and you don't want to get those two confused, for example.
No, absolutely.
I'm wondering if you've looked into selling this feature to web developers themselves. I mean, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really there to help. We're always kind of fighting this battle of this chasm between accessible web development and screen readers. Like in a perfect world, everybody would make their websites accessible. Screen readers would have a real easy job. That's what we'd love to see, but that's not reality. There's a gap there because websites aren't made with accessibility in mind in many cases. And so we have to find tools in the screen reader to cross that divide to try to fill in that gap where accessible websites don't always meet the mark.
Yeah, and it's been sensible and taking a common sense approach here, isn't it? Because look, we all desire a fully accessible web, but that's not the real world. I'm sorry, it just isn't. I mean, yes, it's a desire. Yeah. We should aim for it. Absolutely, no one's saying we shouldn't, but we have to live in the real world. It's okay saying that, but then I still want to be able to go to that website and use that particular form to fill in. Maybe I have to. Maybe it's a medical thing. Maybe it's, as you said, social security number needs to go in there. It could be a form that needs to be filled in. I need to know what these form fields are. So, being able to do that is really cool. I mean, it's funny, I just used something very similar to this on Android. I'm playing with Android a little bit. I haven't fallen in love. I'm just tinkering. I'm just, a couple of dates. We'll see how it goes. But so far, so good. And, it's been interesting because in there, you've got that new feature. Well, it's been around for a little while now, but with TalkBack, you've got the ability to describe an image. And it was, funny enough, a button on the screen that it was actually in a Google app, which was kind of surprising to me. But yeah, there was an unlabeled button. And I was able to use that describe image function. I don't think it attributes it to it, though. I think it just tells you at the time what it is. It doesn't do as far as what you're doing, which is actually labeling the element to come back to in the future. But still great, the fact that we can use AI for this kind of thing. That's a great feature. So that's all built in. That's all part of it. And just insert G or whatever your JAWS modifier key is, and G will get that going, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Right. What else? What else is new?
So we've put a lot of work recently into multi-line Braille. So for you guys have talked, I'm sure, on the show about the Monarch and the Dot Pad and potentially other multi-line Braille devices that are out there now. And that's certainly revolutionizing Braille technology and how people access Braille. And so JAWS now has full access to, in particular, we've worked very closely with American Printing House and Humanware with the Monarch and also Dot with the Dot Pad. We've partnered extensively with both of them to make JAWS have a really good experience on those devices. And then we're also working with some other vendors of multi-line displays as they come onto the market as well. So that's been a huge area of work the last, I'd say, 6 to 9 months, is creating a really good experience, not just where Braille wraps when you get to the end of a line, but actually when you go to a table, it shows you the borders of the table and it puts the data in the cells, and it actually, you can feel the structure now of a document with Braille. So there's a lot of new innovation that went on with multi-line Braille. So that's good. That's still being adopted as people are getting access to these multi-line Braille devices. And of course, we still support single-line Braille devices as we always have. So that's one area. There's also for those who use Fusion, who use the magnification and speech together, we've done a lot of work to update the UI so that some of those speech and magnification features are easier to find. I mean, let's face it, there's a lot of settings, there's a lot of tools in these products, and so some things people are struggling to find. Where's a certain speech capability of JAWS, and it was buried underneath some menus in Fusion. And so we've tried to bring some of those things out into a toolbar. We've also done a lot of work under the hood of JAWS and ZoomText to increase speed and performance. And I've seen specific feedback from users who have been using JAWS for a long time saying, I've noticed a real speed enhancement with JAWS with 2026. So that's good to see, because that's been a journey that the engineering team has been on to try to make JAWS faster, more responsive in certain environments. So you've got a number of things like that coming in. And then, of course, as I always say, this is just the beginning of 2026. This is not all the things coming in 2026. There's a whole roadmap over the next year of a lot more capabilities that will be coming in. Some of them will be tied to these accounts. That's why we're starting out with accounts now. Some of them will be AI. So we'll be back on the show, I'm sure, talking about some of those in the not too distant future. But always remember, whatever you see in one release, there's 20 more things behind it that are set up to be really beneficial for people as well.
Well, you could give us a hint beforehand if you like, a little preview. We don't mind.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe it probably won't be long, I would say, and we'd be ready to talk about some of these things. So
he just likes hanging out with
months.
us. I think that's what it is. He just likes coming in here.
We just always look for a reason to come see you guys.
Get off those team meetings for 5 minutes and come and join us. Have some
That's
fun.
right. Where real fun is.
Yeah,
Can I ask
we're on Zoom.
all these features we've talked about, is this available on the ARM versions as well?
Absolutely.
I'm assuming yes. So that's a stupid question,
Yep.
but just double checking.
Yep. No, hang on. Sorry, I got choked up from the question.
I was going to say,
okay.
are
It's
you all right
emotional.
there? You
Yeah,
feeling?
I understand.
I'm so passionate about ARM. Yeah. No, everything's certainly available on any of the architectures, ARM, x64, all of that.
Okay.
Out to go.
That actually brings up an interesting question because, for a long time, we all know there are minimum specifications for hardware when you're, buying a laptop, you're thinking about, is it going to be powerful enough? I get this question all the time, Ryan. Whenever you're buying a new computer, especially from the point of view of a screen reader user, what's the best to buy? What's the minimum specification? Has that changed in JAWS 2026? I mean, you have got these AI functions. You have got a lot more going on under the hood. Have the minimum requirements changed this time around?
No, we haven't really noticed any differences in that regard, and we certainly aren't telling people to get different types of systems. I mean, again, the AI stuff is being processed in the cloud, and that's because we don't want to force people to have a higher end computer right now to use it. ZoomText and JAWS are both always getting more efficient in the way they process things on the computer. So our goal is never to try to force people to have to upgrade their computer. If anything, we'd rather have the products working on older computers even better. I'd say, in general, screen reading, you don't have to have a super high-end machine to run screen reading. I think the way I think about it is that if you're using magnification, so if you're using ZoomText or Fusion, magnification, it takes much more processing than screen reading does. It takes much more resources. So I would always tell people, if you're using magnification, that's where you might want to look at a little bit higher end specs. Not that you have to, but you might want to, because it's the nature of magnification means it's processing a lot more. And that's no different no matter which product you're using. Even if you're using Windows Magnifier, it's still going to take more processing to magnify than screen reading does to read the screen.
What is the minimum spec for JAWS right now?
We don't really say that there's a minimum. I mean, we do testing on JAWS with very low end machines. I mean, machines that are 10, 15 years old. So the different, 386. If you can get Windows 11 running on a 386, then good luck, and maybe you can get JAWS.
He probably has. He's so cheap, Ryan. He probably has got that running.
I'll make it happen. It saves me $1.
Yeah.
So you do need Windows 10 or 11. So in general, we would say if you can get Windows 10 or 11 running on the machine, then you should be able to get JAWS running on the machine.
Have you got a recommendation for? Sorry, I'm not going to let this drop. Have you got a recommendation for the memory? Like the base memory for a system, because Stephen, you're always talking about the more memory, the better.
16 and above, yeah.
Yeah, I typically would tell people personally, I would get 16 gig or above. You can absolutely, and I've got an 8 gig RAM machine here that I use for some testing, and JAWS will run fine. But it depends on what you're doing. If I'm just using JAWS to go look around the web, do some email, 8 gig probably will be fine. But if you want to get into Office apps or any sort of games or anything more complex, and you're running 4, 5, 6 applications at a time, you're going to want 16 gig for sure in that case.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you talk about ZoomText, and I'm just thinking about this right now from my wife's point of view. I'm thinking about getting her a new laptop that can run ZoomText, the latest version of that. You talk about, obviously, the processing power being more, which makes sense. I mean, my immediate, and actually a lot of friends of mine who use ZoomText tend to go for Microsoft Surface laptops because they're the high end, they're really up there.
Right.
Obviously the great screen as well, which is a big deal, obviously, if you're using magnification. But do you have any recommendations on that front? For I don't mean specific machines, but just in terms of power, in terms of what they should be looking at. I mean, I think about things like onboard graphics versus an actual discrete GPU that's inside a laptop, let's say, or a graphics card inside a computer. Does that matter?
You can use it with any of those. So that's what we would always say. Like, you don't have to have an external graphics card to run ZoomText or Fusion. If you do, you may get some better performance than when you use an internal graphics card. But it's really just a balance of price and like what my main needs are. ZoomText will work on any of them, and it will work just fine. But might you get a little bit better performance with an external graphics card? Yeah, it will be a little bit, but that would be the case for any application that you use. So it's really the same principle applies for ZoomText. So again, depending on what your use cases are, what you're doing with the computer, employment setting versus home versus gaming versus productivity software, those are part of the equation as well, and not just ZoomText itself.
I mean, on the flip side of that, if you did go out there and spend quite a bit of money on a decent machine, be it a desktop, a tower, or, on a high-end laptop, maybe even a gaming laptop, which a lot of people tend to say go for gaming laptops. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, because they obviously have the better graphics. But if someone did spend the money, do you think they would get... I mean, it sounds obvious in a way to ask this question. Well, of course they will get better performance. But will they? Does ZoomText kind of tap into that?
It does, but I think it also boils down to, will you notice the better performance depending on like your level of vision as a ZoomText user? I remember my transition from going from screen magnification to screen reading. Maybe at the early stages I might have noticed some sharper quality things, but once I kind of progressed in my vision loss, it wouldn't have mattered to me what it looked like. I could read the text, but I wouldn't have noticed a lot of the differences. So it sort of depends on your level of vision, and then also, again, what you're doing on that computer, how much other applications you're using that are using that processor and using that external graphics card. So it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah, you reach a point of smaller returns the more money you spend, because it's working great as it is. How much more better do you want it to go?
Yeah,
I'm not going to throw a 5090 graphics card at something.
If I'm magnifying the screen 10x and that's what I need to read it, then probably a really high-end graphics card may not help me much, because I don't have enough sight to really benefit from the extra clarity or whatever may come about with that higher.
It's then about the screen in that case, isn't it? It's about the monitor. It's about all that.
Blinder is better. That's the answer.
Blinder is better. I'm pretty sure, absolutely certain that's not the review of Vispero. But let's just move on from that.
No comment. Yeah. No comment on that one.
Don't think it's a review of Double Tap or AMI either. But maybe Double Tap. But
it was nice working here.
But no, I mean, it's interesting as well when you think about monitors as well, because I know one thing that I quite enjoyed years ago when I was able to use ZoomText was the ability with Supernova way back in the day to do dual monitor work, and
yes,
that's a thing as well. And I mentioned this. I know we tend to talk to an audience who are primarily going to be using JAWS, I would say, or NVDA or other screen readers. But what I mean is, talking to a screen reader audience here. But there are a lot of people out there who are low vision who listen to the show, and I think for them, dual monitors is a big deal nowadays, and having controlled. I mean, I asked this because I honestly have no idea. I've never seen it in action, but I guess you have full support for all that now.
Absolutely, yeah. ZoomText and Fusion both support dual monitors. There's a number of modes you can use it in, and in fact, I'm glad you said that too, because in 2026, ZoomText and Fusion now support dual 4K monitors.
Oh, wow.
So 4K monitors are newer, much higher resolution. ZoomText can support a dual 4K monitor setup now, and that's new in 2026.
Wow, God, I wish I could see to enjoy all this.
I know, it kind of makes
seeing is better.
Yeah, it would have been nice.
Get out.
When I could still use magnification, there was no dual monitors. I mean, this is 25 years ago, so there was no dual monitors. I'd love to be able to take advantage, and that's really kind of from a Braille perspective. That's where split Braille is so unique. Is that it sort of sets up that dual monitor where I'm looking at two things in Braille at one time. And these multi-line displays like Monarch and DotPad, we've leveraged that split Braille technology we built in JAWS a couple of years ago to let you have two different sides or like a top half and a bottom half of that multi-line display and have content from different applications on it. So It's actually a dual monitor kind of idea for those of us who can't see dual monitors now. It's dual Braille monitors in a way.
Yeah, dual
so
tasks.
That's really neat.
That is fantastic.
Going back to the multi-line displays or the tactile graphics, is it a huge impact? Is it a huge difference? You mentioned, the ability to actually have tables with the borders, and get the layout of a document. How much of an impact is that when you're used to just a single line of Braille? It just seems to me like this would be a huge difference.
The feedback is the phrases that I've heard from both people in our own company who are blind and have worked on this and people who have given us feedback is words like revolutionary, life-changing. This is the biggest thing we've seen in Braille in 30 years. This is very, very impactful for people to suddenly go from this sort of looking through a straw kind of mentality of seeing a few words on a display at once to now when I'm proofing my document for class or for work, I can quickly run my fingers over it and get a sense of the formatting and how that table's laid out or how my paragraphs are indented. And it's very, very impactful to the people who are using it so far.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it brings the visuals into the blind world, doesn't it? Because it's like you're seeing the way that someone will see it on a page.
In real time.
Yeah,
exactly.
in real time.
And you could always get that with paper Braille, but we all know the limitations of paper Braille. So now we're getting this instantly on a device that can render it instantly. So it's very, very impactful, this whole idea of really understanding how something is laid out and how it's structured now.
I want to wrap up with one question relating to Home Manual. I want to go back to this for one more time, if you don't mind, because there's one question that we did talk to you about at the time. We didn't manage to get the question into the show, but so I thought it would be good to bring it back up here. How popular is Home Manual license? How much of, tell us how much you can about this. How much of the business it makes up compared to Pro, Enterprise, the other home license and all of that?
I mean, overall, it's still a very small portion of our business, and partly because JAWS, ZoomText, and Fusion are very much international products. I mean, we are all over the world. And so the Home Manual being in the U.S. is one piece, obviously, of the market. So it's something that's very impactful to the people who are using it and the people who are having to pay out of pocket. It's certainly a smaller piece of the overall thing. But that's because of that feedback and because of the interest in it. That's why our team is working with our dealers and other distributors to find, if not Home Manual, for example, some other similar style of program and structure to make it available for others as well.
I mean, you've got this available now in the US and Canada as well. But,
That's right.
The fact that it isn't rolled out around the world, does that lean towards a suggestion that you might reconsider this into something new, into a new idea going forward?
That's partly what our new sales leadership is looking at. Maybe it's not exactly like the Home Manual is, but maybe in certain countries there'll be something similar to that. So I would just say all of those things are on the table, and that's what's being listened to, and those discussions are being had around how can we get the product into more people's hands at an affordable rate. Like, that's the key principle, and what that actually looks like from a naming convention and exactly how something will be priced, that's going to be somewhat dependent on different markets because it's not one size fits all. But those are definitely discussions that are ongoing.
I just want to thank you for coming on and answering our questions directly, and you always do, and you're always so gracious to give us your time. I mean, we were only supposed to speak for 30 minutes, and here we are, the whole show. But, it's been so nice to chat with you, and I do appreciate, and I think our audience really does appreciate you coming on here and taking our questions on board. Listening to the feedback as well is always key, and let's see where it all goes. But I just want to thank you for your time today, Ryan. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys, and Shaun, I'll have to send you a shirt that says "Blinder is better."
I think so. Let's make it happen.
That's right.
Let's get that going. Ryan Jones from Vispero, thank you so much for coming on today.
All right, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan.
What a nice guy. And you know what? Always answers our questions. And, some of them are tough questions. We've got to ask the tough questions here. That's what it's about.
I know. And he didn't seem annoyed with us anyway. So,
no, he's still talking to us.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But no, listen, it's always good. And, if you have got questions around any of this, do send them in. We do get Ryan on regularly and his team as well. I think it would be nice as well to dig into some more of these features in more depth down the line as well, because they do sound pretty cool. And, it's an ongoing process. And of course, we'll be interested to find out where other screen readers are as well with all of this, because I know NVDA has not really dug in too much to AI yet. It's more through the add-ons that seems to happen.
Yeah.
That's more down to the community, isn't it, to build those?
They do seem to be growing and growing, as in the AI-powered add-ons, yeah.
Yeah, interesting times. But what were your thoughts on that? I mean, there's a lot in there. Obviously, there's a lot of interesting nuance to what Ryan was saying, in particular around home manual. I think there's a lot you can read into that.
You know what? If we the conversations about what features are available where, obviously I think that's going to be an ongoing thing, the pricing, things like that, absolutely. But when it comes down to the features, I mean, you can understand, we were talking about eloquence, right? And why I made the point of why would you want a subscription? Because what changes, what maintenance, what improvements are going to happen to a voice? When you look at JAWS and you see the work they do to it, I totally understand why there is a need for sustaining that maintenance, because there's always work going on.
Oh, God,
and there always has to be, to make sure, if something, as he said, the Chrome update doesn't break everything. So I totally understand where it goes there. But I got to say, out of everything, and there's some really impressive stuff, it's the AI labeler for me.
Yeah.
That sounds so cool, right? And it remembers it goes off, labels it for you. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it does actually sound pretty cool. That's I mean, I hate to say it, but these are the kind of things that I want Apple to be listening to, right? And getting it sorted out on the Mac. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
But, I think we're way off that. Let's get Siri fixed
JAWS for
first.
Mac.
Yeah, JAWS for Mac.
Make
Coming
it happen.
soon. Not. Yeah, we did ask that question once and we were told,
we did.
Nope, not happening.
We got laughed out of the room.
Yeah, not for the first time. Thank you to Ryan. Thanks, Shaun. We'll catch you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.